There's an undeniable truth about life here in Italy that I wish people would speak about more often. Because you see, if you plan to move here to Italy and you're moving here without any existing connections, you're literally going it alone, you are about to make your life that little bit harder. And in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly why that is, and also some steps that you can take to try to rectify this and try to help you to build what is undoubtedly one of the most important things of all, and that is your sense of community. Because you see, everything that I'm going to talk about in today's video goes against so much of the dreamy romantic fluff that we have all been fed about life in Italy. But not only that, also some of the things that people have said, myself included. For example, in South Italy, I've often said how friendly and open the people are here. But it also goes against any pictures you might have seen on Instagram of people out for aperitivos in the evening, as well as the kind of nightlife and event culture that this country is renowned for. But there's something you've got to remember. In order to break into these experiences and to break into these friendship circles, it takes time. I cannot stress this enough. If you are moving here and you have no existing connections in this country, you don't know anyone from Adam, don't expect people to be inviting you into their home the very next day to have lunch with them. It really takes time. Even when you've been living in Italy for a long period of time and you decide to move to a different city or town, it takes time to rebuild those connections. Trust me, this has been the experience we've had with our move back to the Salerno province. Everything takes time. And so you need to be focusing in on ways that you can build your community and not neglect this aspect, because I can tell you, first-hand experience, when I moved to Italy in 2018, I didn't really pay much attention to this. I'm a strong woman. I was like, I can manage it. I'm excited about what's to come. I don't need to focus on having like lots of people that I know or this support network. But boy, oh boy, do I wish I had done, because that first year to year and a half was so tough and difficult. And I really think I would have had a much better experience had I really paid more attention to building a sense of community and support system around me. And so here's where we need to get real, because your experience here when it comes to making and forming connections is really going to depend very much on a few different things. There are so many caveats. First of all, it's going to depend on your age, and I really believe this to be true, because if you're younger and you like to go out of an evening and maybe you're here on a study project or a kind of university course or whatever it may be, naturally, as a result of being in those circles and environments, you're going to start to build your connections. However, if you move here when you're older and maybe you're retiring here, perhaps the nightlife side of things doesn't appeal to you as much, other than going to a restaurant, for example. So your kind of ability to meet people is going to fall very much on the people that you get to know where you live, as well as any kind of groups that you may participate in, whether they are hobby or interest groups, or whether they may even be fellow expat groups in your town or city. So your options are a little bit more narrow the older you become, I believe. But even if you're working here, now I will say to you that if you're working here in Italy, it's not a given that you're going to make those connections. Something fundamental for you to remember is that Italian people lead quite busy lives, and especially when they are working, usually they have family commitments or other responsibilities going on as well, which means that they don't always have a lot of free time to dedicate to making new friends. And honestly, I think this can be the same in other countries as well, that people arrive at a certain point in their lives where they feel they have all the friends that they need. They're honestly not looking to make new connections, and you can experience that here in this country, even if you're the most wonderful person that anyone could meet. If that individual that you're trying to make connections with already feels like they know enough people, you're not really going to make much progress. And something else to consider is that a lot of the work environments here don't necessarily nurture or encourage the formation of friendships. Like, I've worked in the education sector for the entire time that I've lived here in Italy, and I can tell you that in some of the previous schools that I worked in, there wasn't really the encouragement for teachers to get together, to have social events, to form connections and bonds. We were like you know, coming and going and not really having much interaction with each other. So, you know, if that has been what you've been banking on in terms of trying to make connections, you're more than likely going to be disappointed. It's not a given that just because you are working with people, you're going to make friends. It really, really, really does take time. And it also means that you have to look outside of perhaps what you're doing day to day and build your connections in other ways. Now, all is not lost, because I really do believe that there are some things you can do to help improve your situation, but I don't want you to neglect this aspect of your life here, whether you are still in the throes of planning your move or whether you have just arrived in this country. Connection is one of the biggest things that will radically change your experience in this country. When I tell you, and I've told you this so many times, but I'm going to tell you again, that it's not what you know, but who you know that really makes a difference here in Italy. I'm telling you, it's not what you know, but who you know, right? This is what you must always remember. It's like the mantra of this country. And when you realize that you need help with something, or you need a recommendation for something, and all of a sudden you've formed a community so that people can come and help you and recommend things, it changes your experience beyond belief. So I really think that if you are in this position where you're suddenly starting to realize just how important connection really is, there's a few things that you might consider. Now, some of them really kickstart when you start living here. So if you are already here, you've just arrived, or you're about to arrive in Italy, then some things that you might want to consider doing are frequenting the same places on a regular basis. Yes, Italy is incredibly varied, lots of different places to eat at and drink at. But if you want to build connections, you've got to be consistent and keep showing up in the same places so that people get to know you and recognize you and build a rapport with you. The first time somebody sees you, yes, they might strike up a conversation because they're curious, but if they don't see you again for another 6 months, it's unlikely that you're going to be met with the same reception when you do return. However, if you keep frequenting places time and time and time again, I promise you that after a few visits, people will start becoming more interested in you, and you start to feel like you are being accepted into the fold, shall we say. Now, I can tell you that this does also depend on where you live in Italy. If you live in a bigger city, by nature of the very fact that there are going to be a lot more people, this might take a bit longer for you to really build connections in this way. However, if you live in a smaller town or village, where, you know, it's immediately obvious if you don't come from there, and you have that kind of side-eye look when you walk into a place as if people go, you're not from here. Trust me, that even exists in the UK as well. I remember certain villages in the UK that I used to go and eat at and drink at sometimes. People would give you the look as if to say, you're not from here. Like, you just know it, right? That also exists here in Italy as well. In those kinds of communities, as much as it can feel quite intimidating at first, because everybody's like, who are you? Oh my goodness, you're not from here. You do make more of an impact in those smaller communities when you frequent a place on a regular basis. I think it takes a bit longer in a bigger city, but it's not to say it's not possible. I definitely made a mark on some of the places that I used to go to in Palermo, just for the very fact that I used to go there often, and Palermo's a big city, right? So it is possible, but it just takes a bit longer. But this is the first thing that you can start to do. Really be consistent. Of course, don't keep going to the same place if it's rubbish, but if it's good and you enjoy the atmosphere and the food and the people seem friendly, keep frequenting it, because I promise you, it's a great way for you to start to get your face known and to start to feel like you are being accepted into a community. But also, it's a great way for you to feel more comfortable within yourself. If you have a question, if you need a recommendation for something, if you've started to build up a rapport with the owners of the bar or the restaurant, chances are they can help you if you need it, right? So that's a really important thing. Secondly, you might also want to consider taking up a hobby in this country. Now, this can be a bit intimidating depending on your language level, but even something like, if your language level is not very great, consider taking up Italian classes here in Italy. You know, you're going to meet people through those lessons and through the structure of the course itself, particularly if it's in presence. So this can be a great way to meet people. Or if you feel a bit more confident in your language, why not consider taking up a hobby like, I don't know, dancing or crochet or whatever it may be. Like, there are some pretty cool places here in Italy and pretty cool activities that you can get involved in, even local dance groups and like things like this. So you can definitely find stuff to occupy you with, depending on, of course, where you live in Italy. Now, of course, if you are not here in this country yet, it's a little bit premature to be considering those kinds of actions. So you most likely will start to venture into expat groups. Now, I have such a love-hate relationship with the traditional method of expat groups because on the one hand, I love the concept of the fact that you get to meet people and communicate with people who are living here in Italy. But on the other hand, I absolutely loathe the negativity, the judgment, and sometimes the clickiness that you can feel in these groups. And like, people enter these groups with such enthusiasm for their forthcoming move to Italy, only to be like, oh my gosh, hounded upon and, you know, beaten down with people's negative experiences and people telling them not to come. Like, it's a really interesting concept actually, because you would expect these groups to be a lot more supportive than they really are. Now, where I love them also can be the fact that you can transition those connections into in-presence meetings. This is exactly what happened with me in Salerno, and this is exactly what transformed my experience in this country and helped me to grow in confidence. But trying to find those groups can be difficult. The ones that really nurture you, there's not many of them around, to be honest. And you can find general expat communities, absolutely, but these cater for expats from all different countries. And whilst I believe that you can share similar experiences from, you know, whatever part of the world that you're living in, I also feel that life here in Italy can feel very particular at times. And sometimes an experience here is not easily relatable to an experience in another country. And so I feel sometimes you really need to focus in on expat communities in Italy. And this is why I have decided to turn the head on traditional expat communities and build my very own one from the ground up. But this is not like any existing expat community. This is one focused solely for people who plan to move to or live here in Italy. It's one full of support, no judgment, and it is one which is going to educate you and encourage you to build a successful, thriving life for yourself here in Italy, however that looks for you. This is the community that I wish I had had immediate access to when I first started asking questions about life here, because honestly, my experience in those traditional expat communities was not fun. People were so critical of my decision to move here. So this is what has kind of encouraged me in a way to begin the expat community that I'm forming, which is the Aperitivo Lounge. The vibes of this community are essentially what an aperitivo is here in Italy: relaxed, kind of good vibes and a chance to have great conversation. And it is this that I want to encapsulate in what I'm building. Now, this community is going to be strictly limited to numbers because I want to maintain a very intimate feel. I don't want it to become this big unwieldy monster that nobody really benefits from. So if you're interested in having an entirely different, fresh perspective on what it means to have an expat community supporting you, backing you, learning from each other, you're going to want to get your name on the wait list. I'll link it up here and also below in the show notes, because I'll be launching this in November and I cannot wait to have you as part of my founding members and, you know, really give you something that I wish I had had access to and learn from all of the experiences that I've had. So this can be a great way for you to build your connections before you step foot in this country, but also to maintain and nurture them when you're actually living here as well. Now, I will say to you that if you really want to make a success of your life here, at some point you will need to integrate into life here and make local connections. But I want you to understand that it is a journey. Don't come here thinking that you're going to immediately be sitting around the kitchen table of your neighbor having a chit chat and a conversation. It doesn't work like this. You know, people need the time to trust you, especially if they have no background knowledge of you and you don't have any existing kind of link to Italy. People need to get to know you, and it takes time. It's like literally starting over again, like first days of school, right? You've got to go with the process, you know, don't take it for granted. Don't assume it's going to be easier than it is, but do be open to the opportunities and possibilities that come your way along the journey of building your community. Say yes to the invitations, go and discover new places, you know, be consistent in your actions in terms of trying to go to the same places and see people on a regular basis, and make an effort. This is the biggest thing, make an effort. You know, don't expect people to always come running to you. You need to also make an effort as well and be receptive to it. If you've enjoyed this video, I think you're going to enjoy this video right here next, and I will see you in the next video.